Please don't forget to subscribe my channel, kindly like and share my videos with your friends and family. The night before the wedding, Jonah said that he would divorce me in a year. I asked him why. He said, after being together for 7 years, I've long lost my love for you and all that's left is responsibility. The only compensation I can think of is to give you the identity of Mrs. Jonah. First, I didn't argue or make a fuss and accepted it calmly. He gave me a surprised look but didn't say anything more. The next day, after finding out that I had run away from the wedding, he smiled and dealt with the elders from both families. He looked at me as if I were a child throwing a tantrum until I took his hand and placed it in the hand of his female secretary. Myself, the man who had always been cold to me, finally became anxious. In the lively banquet hall, wine cups were being passed around. I carried a high and custom-made bag, wore sunglasses, and walked slowly into the hall. 2 hours ago, I received a message from Ivy. Anastasia, Jonah is celebrating my birthday at Jinfo today. You're welcome to come and have fun. Through these words, I could imagine what a smug expression she must have had on her face when she sent this message. Did she think I would be provoked? If it had been half a year ago, I might have slapped Ivy hard a few times to let her experience what it was like to be dominated by the legitimate wife, but now I wouldn't do that. I even went to the beauty salon in a leisurely mood. Men might betray me, but money wouldn't, and a beauty bought with money wouldn't either. At this moment, I stood in the banquet hall with a radiant look. Jonah had already been invited onto the stage by Ivy. Under the coaxing of the crowd, the two of them lifted a big knife together to cut the cake. After cutting it, they hugged each other tightly like a couple. With the atmosphere so lively, someone started shouting, "Jonah, Ivy, kiss." Ivy looked at Jonah shyly and hesitantly, as if she wanted to say something but held back. Jonah lived up to everyone's expectations. He gently kissed Ivy's forehead as if she were a precious treasure. After the applause died down, I watched Ivy's eyes, which were glistening with tears of emotion, and walked gracefully forward. The moment he saw me, Jonah was flustered for a moment, and then he frowned. "Anastasia, what are you doing here?" But I didn't even look at him. I just stared at Ivy, and the next moment I suddenly smiled lightly yet extremely solemnly. I took Jonah's hand and placed it in Ivy's hand. "Miss Sue, since you enthusiastically invited me to come and play, I wouldn't want to disappoint you. I came in a hurry and didn't prepare a gift, so I'll give you this." I gave Jonah away as a congratulatory gift in front of everyone. Those in the audience who knew that I was still Jonah's fiancé didn't dare to breathe loudly enough. "Anastasia, there should be a limit to your nonsense." Jonah seemed to feel that he had been insulted. He pulled his hand out of Ivy's palm, his tone angry. I took a casual look at him. My eyes were calm, without a trace of emotion. "I'm not being ridiculous. The only gift I can think of for Miss now is the identity of Mrs. Jonah." Hearing this, Jonah stared at me blankly. The emotions in his eyes were unclear. When Anastasia was 17 years old, she made the same wish every year on her birthday, to reach the legal marriage age as soon as possible and become Jonah's wife. Half a year ago, 24-year-old Anastasia had almost realized this wish. However, the night before the wedding, Jonah personally shed my dream. At that time, he was sitting in the chair he used to sit in. "Anastasia, I will divorce you in a year." His tone was flat and natural, as if he were discussing with me whether the weather would be suitable for the wedding tomorrow. I couldn't believe it and asked why. He looked at me with his emotionless eyes without a hint of emotion. "After being together for 7 years, I feel that I've long lost my love for you, and all that's left is responsibility. The only compensation I can think of is to give you the identity of Mrs. Joe." First hearing this, I was stunned for a few seconds, and then I laughed nervously. Jonah and I were childhood sweethearts, and our two families were neighbors. He was good-looking. Since I was a child, I liked to pester him. I followed him around for 17 years. Finally, on his 17th birthday, I turned him from a childhood friend into my boyfriend. Did he like me? I thought he did. Otherwise, in the first year of high school, why would he be so angry that he wouldn't talk to me for several days when he saw someone giving me a love letter? Otherwise, in the first year of work, when he saw me getting out of a male colleague's car, why would he pull me behind him with a gloomy face and look at that person with a warning in his eyes? Thinking back on the proofs that he had loved me, my vision couldn't help but become blurred. Seeing that I was crying, Jonah habitually reached out his hand, wanting to wipe away my tears. I avoided it. He looked surprised and withdrew his hand. "Anastasia, forgive me. Just think of me as a bad person. At heart, how could a marriage be maintained without love? But don't worry anyway, I won't run away from tomorrow's wedding." After saying that, he reached out and touched my hair. I didn't respond. Jonah seemed to think that I had accepted his approach and sighed slightly before leaving. The moment the door closed, I raised my head, looking at the delicate hairpins and rings placed on the dressing table. I had the urge to sweep them all to the ground, but I didn't. Like a walking corpse, I took off my bright red pajamas, sent Jonah a text message saying, "I won't go to tomorrow's wedding, let's break off the engagement," and then fled from home. I didn't even bring my ID card. That night, I drove my car to the riverside and blew the cold wind there all night. I stayed by the river until noon before going home. Mom, Dad, Jonah, and his parents were all sitting on the sofas in the living room of my house. Seeing me, Mom immediately rushed over. After looking me up and down several times, she said resentfully, "You naughty girl, even if you're so happy to marry Jonah, you don't have to do this." I opened my mouth, just about to speak. Jonah ran over and gently put his arm around my waist. "Andy, don't blame Anastasia. It's all my fault." Mom didn't like Jonah before. Later, with my constant praise day and night, she became more and more satisfied with Jonah. Hearing what Jonah said, she immediately put on a smiling face with an air of, "If it weren't for Jonah, I would surely punish you." After the crowd dispersed, Jonah took his arm off my waist. Anastasia, what are you fooling around for? I've already said that I'll make you Mrs. Jonah. Why are you still? He was full of confusion. It seemed that he really didn't understand why I had chosen to run away from the wedding. I reached up my hand and gently stroked his eyebrows as I used to. Jonah, if we're doomed to divorce in a year, then there's actually no need to continue this engagement. What do you think? EFRY, isn't there a need? The Land Alliance is a plus for both of our families' companies. Hearing this, I smiled, but tears also flowed down from the corners of my eyes. Then just wait, Jonah, we won't have the day when we enter the Civil Affairs Bureau. Jonah was stunned. Anastasia, what do you mean? It means that the engagement can continue, but from now on we'll each do our own thing. Jonah was both angry and amused. You've been following me around for 24 years. Can you really do that? There was a hint of hidden complacency in his tone. He thought he knew me very well, but he didn't know some women are tough on themselves when they're chasing someone. Once they're completely disappointed and choose to give up, they're even tougher on themselves. That day Jonah and I parted on bad terms. I endured not contacting him, but the day after he went back he made a big fuss about hiring a personal secretary. The girl's name was Ivy. She had just graduated from university, was pretty, and Jonah dude on her a lot. He started taking Ivy to all kinds of important occasions and even allowed her to enter and leave our wedding house. When Ivy sent the message, I was looking through the old photos one by one. Anastasia, I'm Ivy, the secretary of President Jonah. We're at the villa on China Road. Do you remember where President Jonah's blue shirt is? China Road, that was our wedding house. He had taken another woman there. When I realized this, I felt a sharp pain in my heart. I thought, it's not enough, it should hurt more. I directly called Jonah. Did you take Ivy to our wedding house? The person on the other end of the phone chuckled. Yes. I fell silent. The withdrawal symptoms made a sour feeling well up in my heart. Uncontrollably I wanted to cry, but thinking of the person on the other end, I forcibly held back the surging tears. Jonah didn't say anything either. We just remained silent like this. A few minutes passed, and the depressing emotion lingering in my heart gradually dissipated. All right, I won't go to that house anymore. After hanging up the phone, I stared at the ceiling in a daze. For a long time in the first 24 years of my life, I had always revolved around Jonah. I was happy when he was happy and sad when he was sad. To completely get rid of him, I didn't know how long it would take me, but I had to take action. After that day I started to make myself busy. In the past, Mom and Dad always asked me to learn to manage the company, but I didn't want to. I thought anyway. There was Jonah. Now that I think about it, I was really so blindly in love back then, so I took the initiative to tell Dad that I wanted to learn from him. Dad happily agreed. The fact that I was interning in my own family's company was somehow spread to Jonah. The person who hadn't contacted me voluntarily since our last call actually took the initiative to call me. Anastasia, I've already forbidden Ivy to enter our wedding house. At that time I was so dizzy from reading the documents that it took me a while to remember to respond to him. Oh, Jonah was stunned for a few seconds before continuing. If you mind, it's not impossible for me to prepare another set. On my side I frowned and turned over a page. Do as you like. What was written here, I knew every word, but I couldn't understand them. When they were put together I couldn't understand. I was so annoyed. Jonah was also angered by my casual attitude. You'd Anastasia, I've already been so humble. What else do you want from me? Being too aloof for too long is not good. You know that aloof. I took my eyes off the document, thought for a second with my brain, confirmed that I was just too busy to talk to him, and then sighed slightly. If you think I'm being aloof, then think so. Snap. It was quiet around my ears when I let out a sigh of relief. I was completely stunned. Since when had I become impatient with Jonah? The influence that Jonah had on me was gradually decreasing. However, he himself didn't seem to realize it. It was as if he was taking revenge. He attended various important occasions with Ivy in a more high-profile manner. The story that he spent a fortune at an auction just to make the beauty smile quickly spread throughout the whole circle. Before long, someone anonymously sent me a video when a rich second generation kid teased Jonah, asking if he was worried that his fiancée would mind since he had made such a big fuss. Jonah took a sip of wine in silence and then smiled complacently. She's very obedient. She won't make a fuss with me. The private room was silent for a moment. Then many people chimed in. Yes, yes, yes. Who is President Jonah? He's the one who has had the ability to make Miss Anastasia follow him around since childhood, and it's been like that for decades. Looking at him in the video with that confident look, I mocked. Jonah, I once gave you this confidence. Now I'm going to take it back step by step. Originally, because of the jointly developed real estate projects, the marriage alliance between the Lin and Han families was as solid as a rock, but someone couldn't wait. That day, just as I walked out of my father's office, I received a text message from Ivy. She invited me to her birthday party. How overconfident of her, I sneered, but still went to the party. When he saw me, Jonah panicked for a moment, but quickly calmed down. Did he think that I would be like those women who couldn't get the man they loved and would attack the third party? That was something only a fool would do. So Jonah would never have thought that I came empty-handed, but I gave him as a gift to Ivy. Jonah didn't say a word, and his face looked very ugly. He stared at me tightly for a long time. The embarrassment in his eyes faded away, leaving only confusion and scrutiny. I didn't avoid his gaze at all and stared back at him. After a while he seemed to choose to compromise. Anastasia, take back what you said. I still didn't move. The Veins on his forehead gradually showed up and his voice suddenly rose. I'm telling you, take it back, otherwise you won't be able to afford the consequences. The lively venue was silent at this moment. Ivy seemed to be frightened. She shrank back and didn't dare to breathe, so my laughter sounded so abrupt in the silent venue. I looked at Ivy, who was hugging Jonah tightly as if she wanted to merge with him, and said mockingly, President Jonah, now that you have the beauty in your arms, my gift should be quite to your liking, right? As for the consequences, President Jonah, tell me, what consequences could I? Anastasia not afford. Hearing this, Jonah's pupils dilated for a moment. He took one last look at me, pulled Ivy along, and a smug smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Anastasia, tomorrow I'll go to the Anastasia family to break off our engagement as long as you admit your mistake to me now. But I didn't give him the chance to finish his words. Fine. At this, Han was completely stunned. That smug smile still lingered on his lips, still warm, but anyone with a discerning eye could see he realized that he had gone too far, taking advantage of his days. I turned around and left. A male voice came from behind. I really will go to break off the engagement. Hearing this, I touched my chest and confirmed that there wasn't even a ripple of emotion there. At that moment I knew that after 24 years of acquaintance and 7 years of relationship, I had completely let it go. To celebrate, I planned to go to the quiet bar opened by my friend and have a drink, but just as I walked into the hotel lobby I was held up by an unexpected incident. A tall and lanky guy was shrinking his body and standing in the corner like a quail, crying with his eyes red. There was a fierce-looking person standing in front of him. Get out of here as soon as possible. It's no use begging me. If you've offended Mr. Chinurin for it, don't. Supervisor, I beg you, my grandma at home is sick. She's still waiting for me to earn money to save her life. Please, what does your family's trouble have to do with me? Hurry up and leave. The supervisor left. The boy crouched down tremblingly. He seemed to have lost his soul and stared blankly into the void, looking at him like this. My feet that were originally heading for the door suddenly turned in a different direction. Out of my control, I walked up to him, but he didn't seem to notice, so I crouched down to be at a level with him. What's your name? How old are you? What's your educational background? Would you like to come and work for me? I asked 4 questions in a row, and then the boy finally raised his head. His eyes were like obsidian, so bright. I thought to myself, Leo, 22 years old, a senior at Juning University. Leo, the name seemed a bit strangely familiar. Sister, can I really come and work for you? I smiled. Sure, I need a bodyguard. Do you want to do it? The salary is quite good. I lied without changing my expression. Since I was a child, my father had made me learn judo and essay. It was no problem for me to beat 2 men down. I actually didn't need a bodyguard at all, but I had just joined the company and was still in the learning stage myself. It wouldn't be good to give Leo special treatment. I could only create a job position for him. I touched my nose, feeling a bit embarrassed for lying. Yes, sister, I can be your bodyguard. Thank you for offering me this job. I'll risk my life to protect you, sister. The tall and big boy smiled. The dimples at the corners of his mouth were faintly visible. Jonah had extremely good look features. I thought that after more than 20 years of life experiences I should have been immune to good looks, but at that moment I was stunned when I looked at that face. Jonah didn't come to break off the engagement in the end, but I didn't care at all what he thought. I told my father about Leo and he tapped my nose. You girl, aren't you afraid of helping someone with ulterior motives? Having said that, my old father still turned around and asked a private detective to investigate Leo. The detective was very efficient. On the second night, my father handed me Leo's information. I took a look and curled the corners of my mouth. The information on the paper was exactly the same as what Leo had said. On the second day after confirming that Leo's ident was okay, he officially started working. I used my own pocket money to prepay him a month's salary, which was 20,000 yuan. He was an honest kid. He immediately returned half of it to me. I don't deserve this salary. I put on a straight face and transferred it back to him. If you don't take the money, then don't work. He stared at me silently. His eyes became brighter and brighter. After a while he said in a trembling voice, thank you, sister Anastasia. Leo accepted the money. It seemed that in order to make me feel that the money was well spent, he took over almost every aspect of my life. He came to my house early in the morning to prepare breakfast and lunch. After eating, he drove my car to pick me up and send me to work. After getting along for a while, I found that he was actually very smart. Sometimes when I was looking at the project proposals done by my predecessors and couldn't understand some parts, he could even explain them in simple terms. At the moment when I suddenly understood once, I couldn't help jumping up from the sofa, hugging Leo's head and stroking it affectionately. I really wish I had a brain like yours, Anastasia. He blushed and pushed me away. His eyes didn't seem to know where to look. I suddenly realized just now I had pushed his head towards my. Within a second my face flushed with blood and became extremely hot. Cough, cough, cough. I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do. Let's stop here for today. I'm going to bed. At the moment when I turned my back, my facial expressions couldn't help going wild. Slap. I slapped myself. Anastasia, what on earth did you do? Even when I went back to my room, the heat on my face still didn't fade away. I was blushing on my own. I don't know how long it had passed when there was a knock on the door. Come in. Leo stood outside the door. I looked at him, pretending that nothing had happened just now, and forced myself to suppress my shame and said, why haven't you gone home yet? I'm just about to leave. I came to say goodbye. Seeing that I didn't look well, he asked cautiously, what's wrong? I sniffed and said nothing. After a pause, I continued, tomorrow is the weekend. Do you have any plans? Do you need to go to the hospital to see your grandma? He was stunned. He didn't seem to react. It was several seconds later that he said, no, I don't need to. I go to accompany her every night. You asked this. Do you have any plans for tomorrow? I nodded. I want to go out for a walk. Leo took a step forward. Directly, I'll accompany you. For some reason I saw a hint of expectation on his face. How could there be an employee so enthusiastic? I couldn't help laughing. Will you be available whenever I call you? I spend 20,000 yuan. Why do I feel like I bought out your 24 hours a day? He seemed to curl the corners of his mouth, looking very happy. You should rest first. Tomorrow morning I'll come to pick you up. Before closing the door, he suddenly looked at me with his eyebrows raised. Sweet dreams, Anastasia. I was stunned for a second. Was that guy just flirting with me? The next day, while I was still asleep, Leo arrived at my house. Anastasia, get up quickly. If we're late, we won't be able to get a good spot. What are we doing? I yawned, looking sleepy. Camping. I've got everything ready and put it in the car. When you're ready, we can set off camping. Something new. Suddenly, I became interested, and my speed of washing up became much faster. When everything was ready, I sat in the passenger seat and watched Leo drive the car with ease. I couldn't help patting his arm. Good job, you've prepared well. It must be very happy to be your girlfriend. When you're out, you take care of everything. He smiled and looked at me. That look made my intention to tease him disappear completely. Just then my cell phone rang, leaving the awkwardness in my heart. Finding that it was Jonah, I didn't pay much attention and directly pressed the answer button. What do you want? My tone was calm and emotionless, as if the person on the other end was a complete stranger. Was it you who did that thing online? Hearing Jonah's accusatory tone as soon as he opened his mouth, I was confused. Anastasia, you're a rich young lady. You don't have to struggle since you were born and can have a lot of things. Why do you have to make things difficult for a nobody like Ivy? Do you know that now people on the internet are scolding Ivy for being a mistress, saying that she was overconfident and dared to show off in front of the real wife and deserved to be searched by NICE, and you should quickly record a statement saying that you know that Ivy and I are actually friends and that on her birthday you were just joking. Hearing this, my confused mind finally sorted out a bit of thought. So it was for Ivy. I stopped him immediately. Jonah, are you deliberately trying to make me unhappy? Now I'm targeting Ivy and record a video statement to clear her wrongdoing. Who does she think she is? Were the nice and wrong to scold her for being a mistress? If you haven't woken up in the early morning, go back to sleep. Don't go around biting people when your brain doesn't have enough blood supply. You're a human being, not a dog. I was just about to hang up the phone when Leo suddenly used a toothpick to pick up a piece of fruit and brought it to my mouth. The car had already stopped. I looked at Leo and didn't open my mouth. He was stubborn and continued to bring it to my mouth. Just have a taste, just this once. I could only refuse. No thanks, this piece is too big. I can't eat it. It wasn't until an angry shout came from the other end of the phone that I realized that what I said was ambiguous. Anastasia, in the early morning, why is there a man's voice in your bed? What are you doing? Seeing Leo's face turn bright red, I forced myself to suppress my shame and shouted at the person on the other end, it's none of your business what I'm doing. With a snap, I hung up the phone. Leo's hand had already been withdrawn. I felt a bit uncomfortable. Are we there? Yes. Then Leighton, get out of the car. Not daring to look at Leo's face again, I jumped out of the car as a fleeing and rushed to the trunk to get things. Jonas stared at his phone with the screen gone black, completely stunned as he sat on the bed. Anastasia had hung up on him and she was in bed with another man. He shook his head vigorously. When she was with me, even a kiss would make her blush all over with shyness. How could she? His head ached terribly last night due to business entertainment. He had drunk a lot of alcohol. Although Ivy helped him, he was really not used to having a woman shielding him in the front. After having the first glass, there came the second and the third. By the time the entertainment ended, it was already too late. Jonah thought that it wouldn't be safe for Ivy to go home alone, so he asked her to stay in his apartment. Unexpectedly, the paparazzi were so good at taking snapshots, they actually captured photos of Ivy and Jonah helping each other and not returning home that night. This morning, Jonah was woken up by his Weibo was full of messages tagging him, and the little red dots on WeChat showed a conspicuous 99+. When he clicked in to take a look, there were countless types of comments, including those making fun, blaming, congratulating, and just watching the fun. His mother even made a series of continuous calls. When she found that the calls couldn't get through, she directly bombarded him with messages. If you don't like Anastasia, be responsible and break off this engagement. How could I give birth to a son as shameless as you? He endured the headache and sorted out the whole story of what had happened. Only then did he realize that the story of him and Ivy having an affair had been exposed. Shortly after that, someone recorded everything that happened on Ivy's birthday many days ago and put it online. After a night of fermentation, Ivy's Weibo was flooded with attacks. The comment section was in turmoil with continuous cursing remarks like home wrecker, having no moral bottom line. Lock up this scumbag, and the legitimate wife is so unlucky. To be honest, in this video the counterattack of the legitimate wife makes me feel surprisingly good. If you don't love me, I'll leave you. I don't want you anymore. Ivy didn't seem to have woken up yet. Jonah looked at these comments alone and his headache seemed to get even worse. Because of anger, he couldn't tell whether he was angry because Ivy was being cursed or whether he was hit hard by the nice and comment, she doesn't want you anymore. When he was young he had envisioned that he would grow old with Anastasia as time passed and his youth faded away. He had also envisioned that although he no longer loved Anastasia he would still marry her and give her the identity of Mrs. Jonah until the night when he proposed to divorce a year later. What he had envisioned was that he would leave Anastasia first because he didn't like her anymore. However, he had never thought that one day Anastasia would leave him first, that she would abandon their 24-year relationship and not want him anymore. When he realized this, Jonah's heart suddenly felt as if it had been pinched by ants, and that pain should have lasted only for a moment, but it seemed to spread like radiation, quickly spreading to his entire heart. He didn't know what was going on. All he knew was that he was very uncomfortable. He really wanted to listen to Anastasia's voice as he used to, but what reason could he use to contact Anastasia? Jonah searched in his mind for a long time and finally decided to directly use the matter of Ivy being cyberbullied as an excuse. The moment the call was connected, what Jonah actually wanted to say was that all the information on the internet was false, but after opening his mouth it turned into an interrogation. He interrogated his fiancée because of a secretary. As soon as the words came out, Jonah regretted it, but his pride made him unwilling to back down. Finally it led to this embarrassing result. Thinking of the male voice that appeared on Anastasia's phone, Jonah couldn't sit still any longer. He staggered out of bed, quickly washed up, picked up his car keys, and was about to rush out. The moment he opened the door, Ivy rubbed her eyes and came out of the second bedroom. Jonah, this address, which usually didn't seem to be a problem, somehow made Jonah feel strange at this moment. However, he didn't realize the existence of the problem. He nodded slightly and told her, "Stay here recently, don't go out, and don't look at your phone." After saying that, he closed the door. On Saturday morning there weren't many cars on the road. Jonah overtook cars all the way and rushed to the apartment that Anastasia bought outside at the fastest speed, but after pressing the doorbell for a long time there was no response at all. He then called Anastasia's parents. Out of courtesy they answered, but they didn't know where Anastasia had gone either. After hanging up the phone, Jonah looked at his phone and suddenly didn't know who to contact to find Anastasia. Having lived for 24 years, for the first time he truly experienced that when something established got out of control it could be so uncomfortable. Was the little girl who had followed him around since childhood really going to abandon him? Jonah sat in the car waiting for morning till night. When there were cigarette butts all over the clean ground, he finally saw Anastasia. He wanted to rush down, but when he saw Anastasia tiptoeing to kiss that man, he was completely frozen there until the two of them walked into the apartment together. He didn't go down, but like a masochist he kept waiting downstairs until 11. When he saw Leo coming out of the building, he rubbed his forehead, which was throbbing violently, and drove away. When getting out of the car, Leo was suddenly blinded by a gust of wind-blown sand. Seeing him raise his hand as if he wanted to rub his eyes, I quickly stopped him. "Don't rub, come here, let me blow it for you." He obediently put down his hand. However, Leo was so tall that when I stood there I couldn't reach his eyes at all. "Lower your head a bit." There was a soft chuckle from above, and the next moment he obediently bent down a little and automatically adjusted the height to just the right position. I leaned over and blew gently a few times, finding that his eyes were moving around restlessly. I couldn't help scolding, "Where are you looking? If you don't cooperate I won't help you anymore." Leo shifted his gaze back. I blew a few more times and then he said, "It's okay now." I looked up and saw that his eyes indeed didn't shed tears anymore, and I let out a sigh of relief. After coming back from camping I was in a much better mood. Leo, because he had to be busy with his thesis and graduation defense, started running among my home, the hospital, and the school. In just 1 week he had lost quite a lot of weight. "If you're tired I'll give you a break for a while." However, he shook his head and handed me the freshly washed cherry tomatoes. "I don't feel tired at all when I'm with you." He looked at me with those dark and bright eyes. His gaze made my face flushy. "Don't you want to have some private space of your own?" To hide my embarrassment I lowered my head and didn't dare to let him look at my face anymore, but Leo, who was usually obedient, became rebellious at this moment. He reached out and lifted my head. "Anastasia, I've shown it so obviously, can't you really tell?" His gaze suddenly met mine.